Welcome to the Liberty Collaborative, where the past meets the present in the fight for freedom. We uncover the roots of liberty, spotlight the people who shaped it, and explore what it takes to preserve it today. Are we ready to think deeper, stand stronger, and act with purpose? We're in the right place. Let's reclaim what matters most.
And good Thursday morning, everybody. You are listening to the Liberty Collaborative podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Aaron Bowman, here with Kate Carl, Mike Hancock, and Chris Coyle. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining this Thursday, May 7th already of 2026. How is everybody?
Doing great.
Doing great, guys. Great to see you again.
Yes, absolutely. And we've got an interesting show for you today. We're actually going to be responding to some of the comments that we're getting on TikTok. I might have some from Facebook, YouTube, if I can find them. But I thought it'd be interesting because we've been putting up shorts for us to kind of just interact with the people that are leaving comments. But first, let's go around the table here or around the square. I feel like we're on an old 70s game show with the different panels, but let's go around the room here and kind of give an update on what everybody's been up to since last week. Chris, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll jump in. I would say to everybody as you get involved in your town or city, whatever it is, a board of ed, whatever it might be, just understand, and I'm facing it right now in my town, that when people disagree with you, and they are generally from the left side, they will attack you personally. They just will. Just get used to it.
Really,
what's
Chris?
amazing is when you bring up facts, they want to avoid the facts and attack you. So I'm going through in my town, supporting our selectmen and holding elected officials accountable to state law. And sure enough, you can predict it. You get attacked. So, guys, our word to everyone is learn more, educate. Michael, I think you said it. Kate Carl, learn your history. Aaron, you've talked about getting the facts and stay strong. Do not give in because these people attack you personally. They're going to. And really what it does is show everybody what they're made of. Kate Carl, I always think of my favorite rock in a glass case in a church in Rochester that bounced off Frederick Douglass's head. He didn't stop talking. He kept preaching.
He didn't stop. We just hope that don't happen to you.
Yeah. They'd need a bigger rock.
Yeah. But for myself, I've been traveling. My book is out, Douglas versus Marx, and it's amazing the impact that we're having because the book is not political. It's really history. It's Douglas versus Marx. It's liberty versus socialism, and it's really good versus evil. And so people love it because they never had a chance to have information and an intellectual tool that they could use to awaken the sense of the value of liberty in loved ones and their friends so they can have a discussion and win that discussion with their Marxists at the dinner table and at the workplace. So I'm enjoying the fact that we're empowering people to become better messengers of liberty by learning how to leverage Frederick Douglass. And I always say Frederick Douglass is not a museum piece. He's the weapon to defeat Marxism. The sad thing about it is most people don't know that weapon exists.
Excellent.
So glad the book's doing well.
Yeah, excellent.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, on my end, what's going on here in Colorado is I am actually a proponent on a new ballot initiative, 175, which is Save Our Roads. One of the things that's been happening is that the legislature has literally been taking money collected to maintain and fix roads and using it to do other things. And I think our highways and roads in Colorado is ranked maybe as low as 47 in the nation. Potholes all over the place. Wow. So this initiative basically is the one that says that money, taxes that are collected for the purpose of maintaining and repairing our roads should be used for such as that. Then I find out just the other day that some of the progressives in Colorado's legislature has made the determination that they're going to pass a bill that says that if our ballot passes, that their bill is going to do things to totally make it to renege on the promises, on the vote of the people, which to me is just a glaring example again, progressives really wanting to be about power and ruling and not doing what is required of them, which is to protect the rights of the citizens.
Well, Mike, I don't want to enjoy your misery, but it's good to know that someone's doing worse than we are when it comes to roads.
I'm to Connecticut.
So I hear you, brother.
All right.
Mike, well, our roads are doing fine because they're getting increasingly choked by electric vehicles. and you know, the electric vehicles can do no wrong. It's the chosen vehicle. Aaron, how about you? You've been a busy guy.
Yeah, I've been real busy. Got a few things going on here in town with education cost sharing grants and making sure they're being utilized properly and transparently. And then we also got the convention coming up, which this is my first, but I cannot wait till it's over. It has kept Chris and I extremely busy the last several weeks.
Now, which convention is this? This is your Republican state convention?
Republican State Convention is going to be at Mohegan Sun the 15th through the 17th of May. And then we have our state and local House and Senate conventions, also probate, stuff like that coming up. So we had to get all that secured in locations and a lot of procedure. Like I'm going to be on stage entering in the votes from the delegates. So that should be interesting. And
really? Outstanding. So that means Chris could be a keynote somewhere along this. I know.
Well, believe it or not, I'm helping several candidates, proposers, nominators, and seconders. We're helping one candidate with her video, thanks to Aaron. We've done some wordsmithing for them. And, you know, guys, it appreciates the essence of this show. We constantly say to the candidates we work with, give people the headline of what you stand for. Don't just, you know, shop-worn words like cutting taxes. Talk about cutting spending. Talk about leaving people with more of their hard-earned money. Talk about real things. So it's kind of fun, Aaron and I doing all this. But unfortunately, Aaron's like the guy, remember at the carnivals, he'd be juggling live chainsaws. Aaron's juggling, and I'm throwing him another one. And he's going, we'll get through it.
Well, look, guys, Stephanie and I went to the Colorado Republican State Convention a few weeks back and stuff. So I'm anxious to compare notes with you once you get through yours.
Yeah, we'll have to do a breakdown of the convention maybe on the show. Yeah. I don't know how exciting that's going to be for everybody, but I'm going to try to, I don't know if I'm allowed to record in there. I guess so. So I might bring my camera and see if I can get some content for the show, which would be kind of fun. But just a quick shout out to Nicholas. Thanks for tuning in. And Victoria, thank you for listening this morning. So I went over to TikTok and I've been taking our show here, for those of you who are listening, and cutting it up into smaller bite-sized pieces for shorter content because most people have a very short attention span these days. So this one was kind of comical. So we looked like it was Chris and Mike. You guys were talking about the founders' establishment of government to protect God-given rights. And we have, I'm assuming this is a foul word here. So FK Trump 83. And he was gracious enough to say, it's funny when non-white people say the founding fathers gave us rights. Bunch of laughing emojis. Let me take a look when someone that looks like me is allowed to vote or be a citizen. And he's got I don't know if it's a Hispanic type emoji looking, but it's amazing to me how people, I don't want to say ignorant because maybe they just don't know, okay, Carl, because they haven't read some of your books. But to say that somebody based on their color can't talk about our God-given rights doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Wow.
I don't understand the question to begin with because so did he say that based on his color? He said something about it's funny that non-whites or whites are making the comment.
Michael was talking about rights, and he's saying
it's funny when non-white people say the founding fathers gave us rights. Let me take a look when someone that looked like me was allowed to vote or be a citizen.
Well,
So, Aaron,
Michael's not white. Y'all see him down at the bottom. Believe me, he's far from it.
hey, Carl,
It's just so silly.
Guys,
I don't know, man.
So all the listeners understand, this is where, guys, on the Liberty Collaborative podcast, we try and bring historical context. So I'll start with this real quick. For this gentleman, anyone else listening, you got to understand something about the history and context. At the time of the Declaration of Independence, the founding, slavery was everywhere. It had been part of history. The Indians on American continent were enslaving other tribes. Slavery had been around. It was an artifact, a fact of life. Okay, point one. Point two, once the Declaration of Independence was written, it was the first modern political society to declare that kings' rights don't come from someone else. Everyone has that inalienable right. And Frederick Douglass, by the way, when you had some Supreme Court decisions, the whole focus was every man. And we had of course, Dred Scott. Well, since the founding fathers had slaves, they couldn't have been referring to them. Well, the fact is, history showed they were referring to all men. All human beings have this God-given right. So history has proved, guys, the founders had a vision to get rid of slavery. They knew they couldn't do it at first. So you do your history research. These were a lot of things put in the Constitution to do away with slavery. It led to the Civil War. But most of all, just throwing it to you guys, is to this day, nowhere in the world before and since has any country started out with a premise that every man is created equal.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. I think, when I hear stuff like that, Aaron, it just speaks so clearly to how people have been miseducated about our country and its founding. If you take a look at the Declaration of Independence and you go and find like the very first draft of that Thomas Jefferson created, one of the biggest clauses in that was one about slavery and King George's commitment to taking people from another place in the world and bringing them to America and enslaving them. And that was why one of the major reasons why they wanted to declare their independence is because of slavery. Now, that is not to say that there are some people that were here in the United States, the colonies, that were in the business of slavery and wanted to maintain that. But the point is that there was that tension, and ultimately that tension ended up being resolved 100 years later or so with the Civil War, where over almost 500,000 people died fighting over the cause of freeing slaves. So people that say those sorts of things just to me are totally devoid.
Including Frederick Douglass's sons, including a ton of Black formerly freed slaves, and on the South side, Blacks fighting for their slave owners. So we were all in this milieu. And for these people listening, go read the Gettysburg Address. The beauty for Aaron, for the people who have a short attention span, it's real short. And it literally, you can hear the words of Frederick Douglass coming out of Abraham Lincoln's mouth.
It's very interesting. One of the debates we have in the book is debate number 15, where do our rights come from? And to me, this is the most important debate in the book, because all the other rights stem from this question.
Yep.
A right to vote, a right to free speech. And I want to correct the statement this young man made. Our rights don't come from the president or the government. Chris mentioned our rights come from the Creator.
Thank you.
If you get that question wrong, then you are prime meat for Marxism. Because Marxism expresses the fact your rights come from government. So I don't want to read the dialogue, but basically what the dialogue said, Marx and Douglas having this debate, and Douglas said, wait a minute, my rights come from my Creator. My rights are in me inherently. The government has nothing to do with that. And so when a government can give you your rights, the government can take it away. So somebody just said, of course, FDR. No, the church says FDR is not who you think. Frederick Douglass Republican.
Good
But
question, though.
that's a good observation. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And the role of government in what you just said, K. Carl, is to protect those God-given rights.
That's right. That's right. Let me see if I can pull one without reading the whole the 50 turns here. I'll just read the first part. So this here is Dog Law 15. Where do our rights come from? This is Mark speaking. Mr. Douglas, you argue that people have rights independent of the government. But if rights exist outside the state, how can they be protected or enforced? Douglas says, Carl, rights are given by God, not man. They are inherent in every individual. The role of government is to recognize and protect them, not to grant them. That is the foundation of our constitutional republic. That's what you got to know. If you don't know that, you'll be a sucker for a day with this whole thing making socialism cool, and it's about justice. It's about protecting people. Nowhere social has been applied has it worked. It always produced misery, poverty, mass murders, and the destruction of human dignity. Whoever it works. What I don't like about things about socialism, Mike, they come to black folks and talk about it's an aspect of liberty. It doesn't work. So you take Douglas' philosophy, personal responsibility, God-given rights, respect for human dignity. When you apply those principles, it produces human flourishing and freedom.
Yeah.
Well,
this is not philosophical. This is historical.
Yeah.
I think we should just end the show right there.
You got to get the book, Douglas versus Marx, The Battle for America's Soul.
Absolutely.
Douglas crushes him.
Right.
Not because K. Carl wrote it that way. Douglas crushes him because Douglas was right.
Yeah.
Period.
Aaron, just to cap off this one, I know you got a few other comments, but what I love what Frederick Douglass said, so many good things, but one of the things he said, I'm paraphrasing, is just leave us alone, right? We have rights, leave us alone. And, this guy thinking that government's got to come in and I'm going to elect me and I'm going to fight for you. No, how about I elect you and you leave us alone? Why don't you stay home and quit passing more taxes? Sorry.
Exactly right.
So
the roads.
since voting had come up here in the context, apparently Chris and Mike, people love to comment on your stuff. So I don't really have much of people commenting on me or K. Carl, but this one has to do with I titled it "Need an ID to Fly." It's common sense, yet Dems fight it. They know states like Georgia and Arizona are ready to expose real fraud. Why the pushback? So we had Crazy Vet 75 chime in, and he said, if the federal government wants a specific ID to vote, then unless it's free, it's a poll tax and violates the Constitution. Now, Chris, I know you want to jump in here on this. For me, I guess novicely looking at this is everybody, for the most part, has a driver's license. If you don't have a driver's license, you can get a state ID for identification purposes. And I believe that ID is free. I could be wrong, so don't hold me to it. But to think that somebody can't get an ID to go vote is ridiculous, because you need an ID for everything else. I need an ID to pick up medication from CVS.
65 things roughly.
Yes, exactly.
Including, by the way, your welfare check and your SNAP benefits that came from government.
So,
just saying.
So is it a poll tax? What do we think? Is it a poll tax and violates the Constitution if it's not a free ID?
Well, the concept, right, of poll tax, I'll throw it to you guys, is this idea that you are putting hindrances for two people's right to vote. You're making it more difficult. And there's history on that was done to suppress the vote. But what people have to think about is voting cheating, voting, allowing people to vote who are not citizens are actually taking votes away from other people who voted, who really did have IDs. So this idea somehow that if we have IDs, we're discouraging voting. Without having IDs, you're letting people vote that are canceling out actual voters' votes. So they haven't thought this through, guys. I don't think.
People act like people. people think that we live in a utopia and men are angels. People cheat.
Oh, really?
We don't like cheaters. We got to stop the cheating, because the cheaters then cross out my vote as a citizen, as a hardworking American. I mean, it's ludicrous.
Guys,
y'all guys got me going. I didn't want to get excited like this morning, man.
Sorry, but Michael and I were talking.
I go to prayer meeting tonight,
guys. What people do who are innocent? They say, "I welcome an investigation. Here are all the documents. Come take a look." And so Michael and I think talked about, why is it that Arizona has locked up ballots and fighting in court to keep people from seeing them? Does that kind of seem strange? Same thing in Georgia. Everything's fine. Don't look here. It took the FBI to break in doors of a warehouse, say, can we actually see the receipts? And I was going, oh, that's terrible. It is?
You can't make this stuff up, but Victoria says, thank you, Chris, for bringing K. Carl up to the quiet corner. I've even gotten my non-political hubby involved through K. Carl's books. He read it cover to cover and picks it up often, so he has answers when he's out in the community. Well, thank you, Victoria.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
And this book is not a history book. It's a tactical manual. A history book tells you what happened. A tactical manual tells you what you need to do and prepares you. We don't need books out there telling you about Frederick Douglass. We need books out there to tell you how to leverage Douglass's argument. So when you go to city council meetings, when you go to your school, when you're in conversation with your friends, your family members, and who have no idea what the value of liberty, you got an intellectual tool to help you. So anywhere you point and you land this book, there's something you can use. This is not a book that you read, put it on the shelf. This is a book that you read, you carry with you, because this is your tactical manual. Yeah, it works. I mean, y'all got me started, right, man. Y'all should be shaming yourself.
Yeah, it's an operating manual. I mean, that's one of the things that I've run into, Stephanie and I have run into, is the more we've engaged in the community, the more we've become aware of the fact that people just don't know what this country was built.
That's right.
Right. And
that's right.
People like Frederick Douglass are perfect examples of what a great citizen looks like. You have to be engaged. You have to understand what the Declaration of Independence says and what the Constitution says. And these are not war and peace documents. These are very short documents that are very easy to read, but then somewhat it takes work to really comprehend what was said. And what was said and what these people created at that time is something that has sustained us for 250 years. And if we re-embrace that, it will take us for another 250.
Michael, to your point, Aaron was telling me about some of the questions, and someone had asked about the Constitution. And what people have to understand, what K. Carl's talking about was Frederick Douglass talking about the essence of individual freedom and so forth. And what people are missing, including this, K. Carl, we talked about the recent Supreme Court decision in Louisiana. And what people forget is these aren't a bunch of elected officials that are opining, I'm sorry, like the dissenters are now, about societal things. You're supposed to interpret what the Constitution means, the rule of law, right? That's like trying to argue with a compass needle pointing north. Well, I don't like that it points north. I want to say it really should be a little west. Or no, the Constitution said race should not play a role in any government decision. Right. Yeah. So people have to start to understand the Supreme Court is not some sort of political thing. And we got Hakeem Jeffrey saying they're illegitimate because he disagrees with their finding. Hey, why don't you do some research and actually quote constitutional law on why you think the decision was wrong? You ever notice nobody can come up with any constitutional content or context to explain why this decision about Louisiana districting was wrong?
Yet they will proclaim that it's unconstitutional.
Right.
But Chris and I, we talked about this yesterday. I can argue both sides of that because given Alabama's history of gerrymandering black votes, so black votes will diminish in Alabama, my opinion is you got to have some type of concern for race because this is Alabama. And don't tell me this is utopia. because we got, and so what we got to do, we got to become vigilant because now the law is a law. So my question is, what are they going to replace it with? Number one, and what they replace it with, how are they going to ensure that 27%, you got 27% of people in Alabama are black. How are you going to make sure they have representation or a chance to vote for their representation? It don't have to be all black. I don't care about all that because just because somebody's black doesn't mean they're going to represent me. But I want to make sure they don't play the same kind of games they did in the 1950s and 60s with the black vote, like they're doing up in Virginia with the Escalamander type design of the.
That's the lobster.
The lobster. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's my concern, but that means that we got to be vigilant because men are not angels, and they played games before in Alabama with the black vote. So we got to be vigilant, make sure that doesn't happen again.
And what you love is the Democrats assume that the blacks will always vote for them.
That's right.
What the Supreme Court said is black, white, purple. You don't
Unfortunately,
care.
they got the numbers to show it, but yeah, that's that. I think what's happening though in Alabama and all over the country as I travel, the left has gone so far left. You have a lot of blacks now have left the Democrat Party to become independents, and so. And the problem is the Republican Party messaging and brand is so terrible, they're not becoming Republicans, but they're becoming independents. Republicans got to get their messaging strategy together and improve their brand.
Yeah, and K. Carl, the other thing that I would say is that, well, race is one aspect of it, but if you take a look at, I think it's Virginia, right, where Donald Trump won, I think, 48% of the vote, and they have gerrymandered things such that out of 11 seats, 10 of them are Democrat, only one Republican, right? So you got to push it back to some neutral place, right? Some non-political, non-party, non-racial way of looking at things to make things get to a sane place.
And I agree with that because the other point I want to make is I don't think race should be used for anything. I don't think race should be used to give me opportunities nobody else has.
Right.
And it should be used for political power either.
Right.
But we got to watch some of these elected officials who will play games
Absolutely.
with the oppressed to keep them oppressed.
Absolutely.
That's my concern.
Absolutely.
So I guess I'm really going to get your blood going here, K. Carl. So, our last question, because we're coming up on our half hour here, is a clip from, again, Chris and Mike talking about the Supreme Court role debate from constitutional interpretation to legislating from the bench. This was a few months ago, and we had one person come in and say it's called legal precedence and interpretation like all laws. And then we had one that kind of stuck out to me was from Todd Stanley, number 7. The words of the Constitution was already defined by maxim of law and well defined by what is today called legal English in the courts. Supreme Court does not determine what the Constitution means as it was already determined.
But they have to abide by it. That's my thing. They got to abide by the Constitution.
That's kind of a brain teaser here.
Yeah.
It is. And I had to look into some of this because I was
You got to drill down to the logical conclusion. The logical conclusion is they got to abide by the Constitution, period.
correct.
All the other stuff is fluff.
Right. And if you look at it, when the founders came here, they had common law. They had their version of English back then, right? It's different than what it is today. And so that's how it was written. And to think that the Supreme Court can't come in and interpret that, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Maybe I'm off there.
Yeah, that's the primary role of the Supreme Court is to, when a case is brought before them, they are to supposedly determine whether it is constitutional or not. That's their role. So the idea that they shouldn't do that is just fallacious. But
it's leftist, isn't it? That's a leftist philosophy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how they look at it. And that's why we're screwed up.
Remember, there's a great law review article out of the Brigham Young Law School, and I found it and sent it to K. Carl a couple of years ago. I think, Michael, I sent it to you guys. The question is, and it was the Dred Scott decision, and then it was Frederick Douglass really talking about how they interpret the Constitution. That was an early question because the Dred Scott decision said, well, the founding fathers had slaves, ergo they couldn't have thought that slaves were men. And what other scholars and ultimately the Supreme Court concluded is that no, you can't, you're not supposed to try and opine what was in their minds, what was the common understanding at the time,
Right,
the
right.
meaning. And it was clear that the common meaning was man meant all men. And that ultimately became the view. So fast forward, the interpreting, for example, this recent decision, and then the one a year or two ago that did away with affirmative action, where Douglas said, the best way to stop discrimination is stop discriminating. Get rid of it. So there is this view by some that they call them, I guess, what do they call them, guys? The fundamentalists or the constitutionalists. Oh my goodness, they're actually looking at what the Constitution said. They're trying to apply it and argue about that. Others, as you can see, often they're now in the dissenting group, kind of touch on the Constitution, but usually don't. Their dissents read like a current events, like a politician saying this is the bad decision. So in summary, you got to stick with what the Constitution says and its ordinary meaning of the words and the context at the time.
That's a good question.
So we have a question here, and it says, I have a question. Why did the Supreme Court uphold segregation back in the 1800s? Presley versus Ferguson, 1896.
Yeah, let me deal with that one. And
That was 1896, you said?
1896. Yep.
And so here's the thing, is that the proper role of the Supreme Court is to interpret. But we all know that they never, well, at times they don't do that as they should. And so that decision was a very poor decision by the Supreme Court. That's why it was, you had people on that Supreme Court that basically decided that they weren't going to interpret the Constitution the way it was intended. In essence, they created law versus interpreting something correctly.
Yeah, they set back.
Is this separate but equal ruling? Is that what this is? The separate but equal?
Yeah, this was contextually, K. Carl, was after Reconstruction, when sort of the government flipped again. And
what they did, Chris, they opened the door to Jim Crow in the South, but with that decision.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so remember, you guys, Dred Scott was wrong. Plessy was wrong. Honestly, if you look at, quote, birthright citizenship, there are cases where said, look, you've got to both be here and subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. But then we had court decisions saying, well, not really. And so just because the Supreme Court, they have gotten it wrong through history and eventually come back and fixed it.
So this is what I got real quick. I just did a quick perplexity search just because I didn't have any of my other stuff. So it says, this is the facts. In
what is Supreme Court 1896? Supreme Court decision, Democrat Republic.
The 1896 Supreme Court.
I got you on pause. You don't hear me, do you?
Decision, which upheld the Constitution.
Okay, well, my shit don't work. My stuff don't work. I'm trying to make sure. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so
I thought I had you on pause here. Go ahead.
You gotta hit the mute.
I did. Okay.
So
I'm sure go ahead. I'm sorry.
Plessy, a man who was 7/8 white, 1/8 black, deliberately sat in a white-only railroad car in New Orleans to challenge Louisiana's Separate Car Act of the 1890s, which required a racially segregated train accommodations. He was arrested, and the case worked its way up to the Supreme Court. And the decision was in May 1896. The court ruled 7-1 against Plessy, holding that racial segregation law did not violate the 14th Amendment as long as the separate facilities were equal in quality. Justice Henry Billings Brown wrote the majority opinion, reasoning that the 14th Amendment enforced political equality, but was never intended to abolish social distinctions between races.
This is the one. Can y'all hear me now?
Yeah, we can.
This is the one, I think, Mike, where the Supreme Court blew it. And this is where they excluded blacks from the U.S. Constitution, right? Instead of interpreting the Constitution based on how it was written, they interpreted it totally differently, like this guy went through that question he asked. They want to interpret it totally different what the Founding Fathers said. So they excluded blacks from the U.S. Constitution and came with this whole thing that where by promoting segregation, it opened the door to Jim Crow in the South.
Yep.
That's the problem. And the Supreme Court blew it.
Yeah. Aaron, do you know if there was a dissenting vote?
There is. So,
what's your comment? Yeah.
Justice John Marshall Harlan was the only dissenter, famously writing that our Constitution is colorblind and neither knows nor tolerates classes among citizens. His dissent is now considered one of the most prolific in the Supreme Court history.
I thought this was 1883 when the Supreme Court came out with 3 decisions, and this was one of them, because Douglas wrote about this. And Douglas said, if I'm not mistaken, guys, I think that Supreme Court was Republican-dominated Supreme Court, if I'm not mistaken. And check that out for me, because Douglas came back and said, we just have, because of the ruling, we just have been wounded in the house of our friends. That the Republicans just made us, he said the Republicans had just made the black man politically naked.
That's true.
And so I thought it was 1883 when those 3 rulings came. I wrote about it in my book, Telling Conservatives the Truth. And because when that happened, about a week after it happened, Douglas had a meeting in Baltimore, I believe, to talk about that ruling. And so it's just difficult to believe that Jim Crow laws exist in America. Well, it's down in the South primarily. I don't put anything against evil that Satan want to turn things upside down. I'm reading the question that was asked there that Jim Crow listed. But Jim Crow was just a continuation of slavery. That's all it was, just another form. But that's why we had to become involved in the legislative process. We got to become vigilant. And when we see injustice, we got to face it, fight it, and fix it instead of just turning the other way. Yeah. And so Marxism and Jim Crow are kinfolks. It's the same techniques.
We've talked about this often, you guys. There's no political party that has a monopoly on racism. There just isn't.
That's right.
And when you look at what the Democrat Party came out of, right, and now claiming that they are the party to fight for, they aren't. As soon as they could pack schools and community centers in Chicago with illegal aliens, they threw the blacks overboard. They don't care. It's political expediency. So that's Republicans have been racist, Democrats unaffiliated. The point is, as a culture and society, we're the only ones who put America first. And everyone, I'm proud of my Irish Scottish background, but I'm more proud of being American. That's what brings us together. We are a melting pot because we all believe every man is created equal. No other country on earth, including our friends in Canada, have that. So
one thing you say about America, and I agree that the way I like to put it, racism has no political face. Yeah. One thing about America, we have improved. That's the key thing, and we're continuing to improve because that's who we are. But there are some countries that have not improved. Yeah, and their constitution doesn't direct them to improve. But thank God we got a constitution that set the record straight. We just got to abide by what it says on paper. Yeah, and apply it.
I would absolutely agree that we put in place the framework for improvement, and over time we have. But I can say right now, based upon what cultural Marxism is and operating in America, that there are forces in place to drive us back into the days of extreme racism, extreme partisanship, and the like.
Yeah, and
well said, guys.
Absolutely, and just so you know, this was overturned in 1954 with the Brown versus Board of Education.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, very interesting question. Thank you for who said that. What is it? Quick info.
He's asked a couple questions, so thank you for listening.
One more coming up here.
My golly.
Yep, that's what's happening in Memphis at this moment with gerrymandering. Yes, we're seeing that in a lot of places.
Virginia.
Yep. Well, gentlemen, we are at the 40-minute mark. We went a little over today. I like this format today. This was fun. We've got more questions. I got stuff on the 14th Amendment that we can dig into next time. Not that there's enough stuff in the news to talk about, but I guess we'll just start going around with the close, starting with you, K. Carl.
I'm going to read the first two turns in the third dialogue. It's entitled God, Use of Imperfect Man. It kind of goes along when we're talking about the Constitution of the Founding Fathers.
Absolutely.
So Mark starts this off. Mark says, Mr. Douglas, you argue that all men are created equal, must include the enslaved. But how can a document written by men who own slaves be trusted to defend freedom? Douglas responds, Carl, the promise is greater than the man who wrote it. The founders were imperfect, but God has a way of using imperfect men to write noble documents. Look at the scripture. Moses was imperfect. He doubted God, but God inspired him to write the first 5 books of the Old Testament. King David was imperfect. He sinned with Bathsheba, but God inspired him and gave us the book of Psalms. The Apostle Paul was imperfect. He hunted the Christians, yet God inspired him to write most of the New Testament. The founding fathers was imperfect. Some of them owned slaves, but they gave us a doctrine that reads, we the people, not we the white people.
Nice.
Mic drop.
There you go.
I'm out of here, guys. I gotta go. I'm out of here.
Carl.
All right.
Following up what you said, Aaron and I say this to everyone. Folks, if you understand this simple idea, where one right ends, another right begins, right? This person's right doesn't overcome this person's right. There's a natural tension in our society and our laws about rights, right? And there has to be a balancing, give and take, right? So there's no reason we can't have a civil discourse about legitimate policy differences. We don't have to attack the other side's character. We can have intellectual, thoughtful policy debates and try and find a way forward. That's the way our system works, but it thrives on disagreement. So the whole point of this show is it's okay to disagree. Do it civilly. Go get your facts, challenge my facts, and let's work it through together. But when you don't like the outcome or you're frustrated with the facts, you don't attack people or belittle them. That's something we feel strongly about.
Absolutely, Chris, I fully agree with that. And I think that, as I always say, education, the more we educate ourselves to get at why this country was founded, the principles that it was based upon, that it is based upon, and the purpose of which is to create a more perfect union. Not that it was perfect. They didn't, never anywhere does it, in the very least, imply that they created something perfect. It's about us continually working to make our society one in which freedom reigns. And so I encourage people to study, and to learn and understand that if you're being driven to hate somebody else for any reason, you are not on the right path. You're not on the right path.
Absolutely. Well said, Mike. And I'll just close off on this. I just realized we can do polls while we're doing a video stream. So for those of you who are watching, if you could just type 1 or 2 in the chat, I just want to see if this thing works. Then maybe we can do polls as we're going through, just make it a little interactive with everybody. But for me, I think today was a fantastic show. Great content, great discussions. And it's really good to be able to see what other people think about the videos in our podcast, and then be able to kind of sort of interact with them by taking their questions and deconstruct them a little bit and going through them. So hopefully everybody that watched this or watches the replay listens to it on, we're on Apple iTunes now, so you can find us there, or your Alexa device. But I think it was a great show. I was pretty impressed with the questions that people are leaving, and it really stimulated a great conversation today. And I don't know if this whole thing works or not because nobody's typed in 1 or 2 yet. So,
Aaron, thank you for all your technical work every week. It's really
Yeah.
great. And posting these.
Yeah, great facilitation.
yes, I
Yeah.
try. I try.
All right,
now-
you guys.
All right.
Video. We'll see you guys.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the Liberty Collaborative. If today's episode lit a fire or gave you clarity, share it and be part